What's up, Gorehounds? So tonight, got a special treat for you. I'm going to be telling you my top 5 horror films of all time. I'm not going to be doing a review on these movies, at least not a full review. I'm just going to be giving you a synopsis and also stating my beliefs of why I think each of these movies deserves to be thought of as one of the best out there. So, at number 5, I have Friday the 13th, the first one. This is the box set that contains the first 8 movies, but yeah, spot number 5, I have the first Friday the 13th. So it was made in 1980 and directed by Sean S. Cunningham, and it was the first really violent slasher out there. So the reason it was so violent was because Tom Savini did the makeup and gore effects, and if you're a horror fan, knows anything, you know Tom Savini. His work dates back to Dawn of the Dead back in the 70s, and yeah, he's just a really well-known name in horror for makeup effects. And a lot of the kills in this film were just crazy. Before this, in the slasher genre, all you really had was, for really well-known movies, was like Halloween and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Both were great, both were very suspenseful and well-known movies, but they didn't have a whole lot of blood. Especially not Halloween. And Texas Chainsaw implied a lot of horror and blood and guts, but it didn't really show nearly as much as it could have. Friday the 13th kind of came around and changed all that with Tom Savini's gore effects. And it also, I don't want to give anything away, and anyone who likes horror movies has probably already seen Friday the 13th. It's the first one. It's one of the most popular horror films out there. It's one of the biggest franchises as well in terms of money. But there's an incredible twist and shock at the end that you have to see it. Basically, it's sort of like if you've ever seen the movie Saw. There's a huge twist at the end of that as well. It's just a really cool twist and flips the whole movie around. You think it's over, but it's not. It's one of those twists. So for that reason alone, if you haven't seen it, you have to. And yeah, Friday the 13th just got the ball rolling for the slasher formula of kids going out to the woods or some secluded place. In this case, it's a campsite, and getting murdered by some sort of slasher or boogeyman or whoever. Well, in this case, boogie woman, but I won't go into that. Won't go too deeply into the plot. And yeah, basically getting offed because they're either doing drugs or having sex or being irresponsible, not listening to the warnings of locals in the film, and yeah. So Friday the 13th basically just got the ball rolling for that whole slasher formula that Scream would actually later parody in the 90s. So yeah, here, without further ado, here's a trailer of the first Friday the 13th. Give you an idea of what it's like.
Hello? Who's that? Oh, hi. What are you doing out in this mess?
1, 2, 3.
We weren't doing anything. We were just messing up.
4. 5. 6.
Must be my imagination.
7.
Can I help you? Hello?
8. 9. 10, 11, 12, Friday the 13th. You may only see it once, but that will be enough. Friday the 13th.
All right, so next movie on my list, number 4, is the original Nightmare on Elm Street. This one. This is the first 4. I tend to buy sets of these movies so as to save money on them. And it was released in 1984 by Wes Craven. And slasher movies have been out for a little while by then, but A Nightmare on Elm Street was one of the first really original slashers with a really terrifying boogeyman. It wasn't just some guy in a mask like Jason from Friday the 13th or like Michael Myers from Halloween. It was Freddy Krueger, right, with the claws, and he's got the burnt skin and everything. And everyone who's seen A Nightmare on Elm Street knows, the legend behind it. It's Freddy Krueger swore revenge on the parents who killed him, and he was burned alive. And then he starts appearing in these children's dreams as this burned man with this top hat and really gross red and green Christmas sweater, and the finger knives, and he starts murdering children these teenagers, not children, in their dreams with the knives or in various other ways, and they die in real life. So it's the whole idea that if you die in your dream, you die for real, right? And how terrifying is that, right? Because you have to sleep. So it's not quite as terrifying today, just because it's a very overdone formula now as well. But at the time, it was extremely original and it was extremely terrifying. And yeah, it just puts you off sleep too. I mean, you're not going to want to sleep after watching a movie like that. And I also like how it broke away from the slasher formula right when it was starting to get old. Because Friday the 13th, you had that in 1980, and then for the next 4 years, basically, it was just rip-offs of that in Halloween. You had movies like Terror Train or Prom Night, which were okay, but basically just ripping off that Friday the 13th formula. This was the first time where it really got broken by another slasher film. So, without further ado, here's a death scene from A Nightmare on Elm Street, one of my favorite death scenes. Here we go.
Please, God.
This is God. Watch this.
All right, so number 3 on my list is My Bloody Valentine. So this film was released in 1981. It was directed by George Mihalka. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Mihalka, I don't know. Anyway, the story concerns a miner who gets trapped in a cave-in for 3 days due to the negligence of his superiors. Basically, you have two foreman miners at the top of the mine who are supposed to be responsible for the safety of the miners below. But it's Valentine's Day, and the foreman miners decide they want to go to the Valentine's dance party. So they just leave the miners down there before they're safely out of the mine, and they don't check the levels of methane. Someone lights a match or turns on a light or something, and the whole place explodes and caves in. The only one they find alive is someone named Harry Warden. And after they find him, he kills all those responsible for his death, so the two foremen who were negligent, and then swears that if they ever hold another Valentine's dance, he'll come back, kill everyone again. Anyway, that's the local story from My Bloody Valentine. Just in the bar, some local nutcase tells the story to these kids, and the kids are like, yeah, whatever. But yeah, and that's the other thing about these slasher films from the 80s is the ignorance and the arrogance of youth kind of plays into it as well. It makes them really good victims for these killers. So the killer in My Bloody Valentine is a miner with a mining mask and a pickaxe. And there's a twist behind who the killer is and everything, but I won't get into that. I won't get too deeply into the plot. But what I do like about My Bloody Valentine is it has extremely graphic, gory kills for the time, especially back then, because I have the director's cut. Actually, I didn't show you guys the box yet. This is a special edition director's cut, My Bloody Valentine from 1981. And yeah, the kills are insanely graphic. There's one kill where the miner takes his pickaxe and actually swings it up through a guy's chin, and it comes out his eyeball. So it's sticking out of his eyeball. You can see his eyeball on the end of the pick. And then he drags him by the face. So yeah, put that in your head. I mean, that's just, especially for 1981. I mean, that's something that would be considered shocking even now for, a movie like Saw or Hostel. So it was very controversial, very shocking, especially for the time. And also just a scary look of the miner coming at you in this pitch black mine with, these very dingy light bulbs. It was a very good horror film, and it just had really suspenseful scenes even leading up to the death scenes, just like Friday the 13th. And this is one of the few sort of Friday formula ripoffs. Didn't completely rip off the story of Friday the 13th, but one of the few Friday formula ripoffs that really worked. So, that being said, here's a trailer of My Bloody Valentine.
It's a bad time, this time of year.
How many times is he gonna tell this story?
Oh, let him tell it. I love fairy tales.
This ain't no fairy tale, little girl. If you don't take it seriously, you're a fool!
The first Valentine's dance in 20 years has to be something special.
Look, Landers, you gotta get a lot of exercise if you're gonna grapple with Gretchen.
Oh, yeah? Well, I got a Valentine for her that she's never gonna forget. Right to the heart, huh?
In this town on Valentine's Day, everybody loses their heart.
Roses are red, violets are blue. One is dead, and so are you.
It can't be happening again.
No!
It can't be happening again.
What's going on over in Valentine Bluffs? It looks like Harry Warden's back in town.
It happened once. It happened twice. Cancel the dance or it'll happen twice. In the town of Valentine Bluffs, there are many ways to Take your pick. My Bloody Valentine.
All right, so number 2 on my list is John Carpenter's The Thing. This is one of my favorite films of all time, and the reason is it has a really original concept at a time when slashers they dominated, but they were also dominating the generic way. There was one being made every other week, and it was just, one Friday the 13th ripoff after another. So this movie was released in 1982, and it was directed by John Carpenter. So the basic story, without getting into too much detail, is they have an outpost in Antarctica, and these researchers discover a form of alien life that can take the shape, change its DNA, and change its cellular structure, I guess, to look like anything that it can come into contact with. So that's why the movie is called The Thing. The Thing, literally, I couldn't describe it to you with words even if I tried. It would be futile. But basically anything it comes into contact with, it absorbs, or absorbs isn't the right word, but it takes on some of its properties, and it starts to sort of combine these properties of the different things it's come into contact with to create this creature, this thing. And although I can't describe it well at all, I do have a few action figures, these little toys of what the thing is supposed to look like. So here's one, just to give you an idea. Yeah. If you haven't seen this movie, and if you think these things look strange, you should definitely check it out, because it's a lot cooler when they're in motion. That's actually a dog exploding out from this thing's chest. And there's a head there with arms coming out. And there's some guy's head on the side here. Anyway, looks very grisly. And then there's another one here with this sort of twisting head coming out of a base of arms and all these tentacles. And yeah, really, how do you describe that, right? So, yeah. Anyway, so this film was, it had absolutely terrifying and shockingly lifelike special effects. I mean, even by the toys, I mean, you can tell that, and the motion that they put them through, these special effects, it looked amazing for the time, right, 1982. And the villain was seemingly indestructible with no clear weakness, and and it wasn't just a boogeyman slasher like Michael Myers or Jason, from Friday the 13th. It was an actual original concept. And although it was loosely based on, I think, the 50s movie, The Thing, I've always thought John Carpenter's version was superior. I haven't actually seen the 50s movie, The Thing, but I've always thought that from what few clips I've seen of the original one, that John Carpenter's idea took it in another direction with this beast that could just absorb the properties of anything and become this ever-growing, unstoppable entity. So, yeah. For that reason, it takes number 2 spot on my list. So without further ado, here's a clip from The Thing.
Now I'll show you what I already know.
It's a crock of shit.
Let's try the Doc and Clark. Now, Clark.
And Clark was human, huh? Which makes you a murderer, don't it?
Palmer now.
This is pure nonsense. Doesn't prove a thing.
I thought you'd feel that way, Gary. You were the only one that could have got to that blood. We'll do you last. Get away from me! Retreating!
What is it?
All right, so number one on my list is also a film by John Carpenter. John Carpenter's Halloween. So this is my favorite movie pretty much of all time for a variety of reasons. First of all, it makes the suburban setting, of being in a suburban area of a city, look creepier and more unsafe than any other horror film I've ever seen that's tried to do that, ever. It also has point of view shots for, like where you're seeing from the killer's perspective, the camera watching the victims, and really heavy breathing on the camera. So it's supposed to be the killer breathing through his mask. It just makes the tension mount. And the killer, almost anyone has seen Halloween by now, especially with Rob Zombie's remakes popularizing Halloween. But the killer is basically a faceless cipher that looks and acts inhumanly powerful and machine-like. There's a scene where Donald Pleasance is the doctor, Dr. Loomis, in Halloween, and the cop that he's with hears about the body count or something that Michael Myers had, or I think they were just looking at a dead dog or something. And the cop says, it's like, no man could do this, or something like that. And then Dr. Loomis looks at them and says, this isn't a man. And that's a great quote, because the image of Michael Myers, he's just this unstoppable killing machine that has no face and is just a lifeless entity that just lives to kill. And lastly, one of my favorite things about this movie is it has one of the creepiest scores of all time in a horror movie that I've ever heard. And I have an ending clip from it. I believe it contains the clip. I can't remember entirely, but I'll remember when I watch this video. Anyway, yeah, it's my favorite film of all time. I'm not going to get into the story because most people already know the story, but it's creepy. It's a classic. It's scary to this day, which is a lot more than I can say for most other horror movies. Even a few on this list aren't as scary today as they were back in the day, but Halloween, in my opinion, is just as scary. And it has an ending that is absolutely terrifying. I won't say why. Most people have seen it, they already know, but if you haven't seen it, you have to see it. Don't bother with Rob Zombie's remakes. They're okay, but they're unnecessary, and yeah, just see the original Halloween. It's one, in my opinion, the best horror movie ever made. So anyway, without further babble from me, here's the ending clip of Halloween.
I'm gonna take a little walk.
What is the boogeyman? I'm scared.
There's nothing to be scared of.
Are you sure? How?
I killed him.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
Get in there, come on, Tommy. Now lock the door. lock the door. Come here. Now just listen to me. I want you to go down the stairs and out the front door. And I want you to go down the street to the Mackenzie's house. I want you to tell them to call the police and tell them to send them over here.
Oh,
Now, do you understand me? Yes. Go do as I say.
So yeah, anyway, that's my those are my top 5 horror movies of all time. Hope you enjoyed watching this. See you later, YouTube.